Hello and welcome back. In this session, we're going to talk about preparation. Now, I would consider this one of the most important parts of this course, so make sure that you watch this video and take notes with your new note-taking skills. My granddad has always drilled into me, failing to prepare is preparing to fail, and for years I thought that it was just nonsense. I thought that people plan because they don't know what to do, they don't want to do what they need to do, or they're just lazy and wasting time. But I was wrong, and I quickly found this out when I was studying for my admin cert. I got very lost very quickly, I became confused easily, and I became so frustrated that I almost quit. And this was just because I had no idea what I was doing and I had no plan to help guide me. Once I'd put together a plan, things started to fall into place. I had structure to my learning, I knew that I was studying the right thing at the right time, and I was being efficient with my studies, meaning that I was getting more bang for my buck and maximising my time. The 3 steps are: know what concepts to study, know how to study, and know what material to study. Let's start with step 1, know what concepts to study. This is a really simple step that people don't take. So let me ask you a question. How many times have you read the exam guide? I mean really read it, not just glanced at it. Did you look at each of the sections and the objectives to get a better feel for it? Well, what about if I told you that the exam guide is the biggest cheat sheet of all? It tells you what you need to know. The first step that you should take is to break the exam guide down, to look at each section and objectives, and to really understand what the exam is going to be covering. If you take the time and you read the objectives, you'll really see that there's more to them than meets the eye. I've done a couple of videos on this, and I've included them in the Salesforce Certified courses. But let's quickly run through a couple of points on the administrator certification so I could teach you what to do. So here we are in Trailhead and we're on the Salesforce Administrator Exam Guide, and I'm just going to scroll down to the About the Exam section here. This section gives us some high-level information such as the number of questions, the time allowed for the exam, the passing score, and there's some other information such as costs and retake fees, but they don't really help us with the exam. Now, these 3 pieces of information, the number of questions, the time allotted, and the passing score, allow us to work out some key points. 1, the number of questions that we need to get right, which is just 65% of 60, which is 39, so we know that we need to get 39 questions right to pass. We also know that we have 105 minutes to complete the 60 questions, so there is the chance that we'll have 5 non-scored questions, but we can't count on that. So 105 minutes divided by 60 questions is 1.75. So we'll roughly have 1 minute and 45 seconds per question. Now I usually take this information and put it into an easy to reference cheat sheet which you can see here. These are all good benchmarks for us to keep in mind. We now know what our goal is. So what we want to do now is head back to the exam guide and we're just going to scroll down a little bit further to the recommended training and references. Now, the recommended training and references are a really handy way to point us in the right direction for where we should study. They often include trail mixes, trails, super badges, and anything else that we might find useful. It's important to make the most out of those trail mixes as they allow you to get maximum hands-on experience and exposure, which, as you will find out later on in this course, is critical for learning. So let's scroll a little bit further down and we have the exam outline here. Now, this is where all the gold is. You can see that we have our section headers, so this is just how the exam is going to be broken down. We can also see that we have weighting per section, so we can use this to work out how many questions we're going to get per section. So we'll get 20% for the configuration and setup section. 20% of 60 is 12, so we can expect to face 12 questions on this section. If we look at the productivity and collaboration section, we can see that it's only 7%. So 7% of 60 is 4.2. We can expect to face around 4 questions on this section. This means that we should be spending 3 times as much time and effort on configuration and setup than on productivity and collaboration, as we know we'll get 3 times as many questions. So we can use this information to make sure that we spend our time wisely and on the most impactful areas of the exam. Again, I tend to put these into the cheat sheet, the spreadsheet, for easier reference. So as you can see here, but you can do with them what you like. Just make sure that you know which areas are most important in your studies. Now let's head back to Trailhead and we're going to open up the configuration and setup section here. And as you can see, we now have a list of all of our objectives for that section. Now, I copy and paste these into the spreadsheet from before, but in a separate tab. That way I have an easy to reference guide for them. So you can see here that I've got a new tab here, sections and objectives, and I've just copied and pasted them here as you can see. I also record the key concepts and features. I record my confidence of those concepts and features and any areas for concern that I need to focus on when studying, so my weaknesses. So how do I extract those concepts and features? Well, just by reading the objective, looking in Salesforce, the trail mix, and other resources, you can generally get 90% just from the objective itself, but there's no harm in taking a quick look around and Googling a couple of things. For the first one, describe the information found in the company settings, for example, company settings, fiscal year, business hours, currency management, and default settings. We are pretty much told that we need to know about company settings. We're even told the specific features of company settings, such as fiscal year, business hours, and currency management, etc., that we need to know. So I take that information and I put it into the concepts and features column so I can easily see what I need to know. If we do that for another one, so we're going to look at the given a scenario, demonstrate the proper setup and maintenance of users, you can see that if we start breaking that down, we've got user creation, licenses, user maintenance, such as freezing users and deactivating users. So we know the questions are going to be along those lines. Again, we take this information and we add it to our spreadsheet, and we do this for all of the objectives and sections, and then we end up with a pretty comprehensive spreadsheet with everything that we need to know. Once I've done that, I go a step further and I create another tab on the spreadsheet that I use as my learning checklist. So I break each of those sections, key concepts and features into individual ones that I can then track my progress against. I use the columns of built and understood so I could track if I've built it and if I understand what it is, what it does and when it's used. And then I record my confidence about that concept too. This creates a really granular way for me to track my learning and to plan for what I need to know. It can seem a bit much, but I promise you, once you've done it once, you'll do it for every single certification that you take. So let's quickly recap what we've done there. We've used the About the Exam section to identify key information such as the total number of questions, time for the exam, and the number of questions that we need to get right to pass it. Next, we've looked at the sections and we've used the weighting to work out how many questions per section we can expect to face. This gives us an insight into how much time we should spend studying for each section. Then, we've broken down each objective for each section to understand the concepts and features that we can expect to face, which has created a sort of study guide of what we need to know. And then finally, we've used that information to create a checklist of sorts that we can use to guide and track our learning and progress. So now, let's move on to step 2, and this one is quite quick. It's just a case of working out how you learn best. So, what is the most effective way for you to learn and what type of material works for you? There are generally 3 types of learning: visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. Most people have one dominant method and another secondary one. Visual learners prefer to learn through visual aids such as videos, diagrams, charts, graphs, images, and written instructions, and they grasp information more readily when it's presented in a visual format. Auditory learners learn best through listening and verbal communication. They tend to absorb information effectively through podcasts, lectures, discussions, spoken explanations, and audio materials. Kinesthetic learners learn by doing and experiencing. They benefit from hand-on activities, physical demonstrations, interactive exercises, and practical applications of knowledge. Once you know your preferred method, you can tailor your learning material around it. Now, this shouldn't be your only way of learning. You need to engage all of your learning senses and methods. That's why I've designed the GFC courses as they are. All 3 of your learning modalities are engaged. Videos engage your visual and auditory senses, and then there are build-alongs so you can carry out the configuration yourself and engage your kinesthetic senses. The cheat sheets focus on visual learning again, and then there are other tools that I've used to engage all of your senses at once. The key is to immerse your senses in the information so that you're learning from different angles through different methods and you're making your brain actively work and listen and learn rather than passively. Think of it this way. How many times have you watched a film and your attention has drifted off and you've forgotten what's just happened? Or you was listening to a podcast and your mind wanders and again you can't remember what's been said. This was a huge issue for me. which is why I created the GFC courses as I did. You're required to actively participate in each lesson, so you can't just passively learn or turn off. This leads nicely onto the last step of preparation, collating your resources. Now, there's a key statement that I want to make here that might be controversial. There is no one single course or source that will give you everything you need to learn and pass a Salesforce certification exam on its own. There is no one-size-fits-all silver bullet solution that once you've completed it, you're going to pass the exam. You need multiple sources. And that's why it's important to collate your resources. You need to find and use resources that work for you and play to your strengths and learning preferences. This is actually easier and quicker than you think. Your first resource should always be Trailhead, and there's nothing better than Trailhead for getting hands-on practical experience. While Trailhead is fantastic, it isn't a complete solution. It doesn't give you the more detailed information that you really need to know to pass your certification. That's why you should supplement it with other learning materials. That can be free resources such as blogs, YouTube videos, podcasts, etc. Or it can be with materials such as our GFC courses. This will help you build up a source of accurate and reliable information that you can use with your studies. It takes a little time up front to collate all of the information, but it's well worth it and you can quickly find what you need when you want it. This comes in useful for a couple of other techniques later on. So you're probably thinking or wondering what resources I would recommend. Well, it's no surprise that I'm going to recommend Trailhead and I'm going to recommend our courses. I've spent a lot of time designing, crafting, creating and fine-tuning them to provide you with a clear, concise and comprehensive Salesforce training that gets you certified fast. As I mentioned before, I purposely engage all of your senses and the courses follow a specific structure and lesson structure to accomplish this. First, we have an overview of the concept, so this gives us a big picture view. Then we dive into the more technical and specific aspects of it, where we take a more granular level look. Next, we walk through a build-along example where we bring the concept to life with a business use case. This can help you understand the practical application of the concept and how to configure it, which in turn increases your knowledge and retention. Then we walk through another business use case, a challenge if you will, but this time you can pause the video and you can configure it yourself. This is a great way to test your knowledge. And then finally, we finish off with a concept summary of what we've learned and the key information to remember. And then to really finish it off, there's a cheat sheet, and this is in the form of a mind map, which helps you visualize the concepts, its key information, and how it helps you understand what you need to know. The cheat sheets are great for revision too. This structure works incredibly well as it actively engages all of your senses and it encourages you to get hands-on with Salesforce. This makes a huge difference in the effectiveness and efficiency of your learning, meaning that you can learn more in less time and you can recall it faster as you've added meaning to that information. So now let's move on to the next session.